Hey everybody, Jeff aka GCurse here. Welcome to the Black Site Files from Unsolved Mysteries Season 1 Episode 13 review. This episode covered Season 1 Episode 13 of Unsolved Mysteries. In that episode, there were a total of 5 cases. However, due to me covering 2 of those cases previously, the cases that you see here, Roger Kane and Stephen Cox, I did not cover those cases in this episode of Black Site Files from Unsolved Mysteries, but I did cover 3 of the cases that I have not covered yet. Those cases being the case of Lee Selwyn, Michael Rosenblum, and Arthur Frankford. I will be giving you a breakdown of each of those cases in this review, and I'll, at the very end of the video, I should say, I will be giving you my grade for this episode of Unsolved Mysteries and everything. So let's get on with the review, shall we? So first off, we had the case of Lee Selwyn. This was actually a pretty tragic case. This was a case of a guy who just liked to hang out with his friends and ride his motorcycle. One night, basically, Lee was at the wrong place at the wrong time due to the actions of his friend, I guess you could say. Lee was actually killed. Lee had nothing to do with the incident that led to his death. And, there is an old saying that a person is in the wrong place at the wrong time. This is actually one of those best examples. Lee was known for being a very peaceful guy, that he did not even prefer to fight. If he was presented with a situation that, there could have been a fight, he would prefer a more peaceful way. He would walk away if he could. But sadly, he died to homicidal violence when he was basically run off the road and his motorcycle crashed into a telephone pole, power pole, whatever you want to call it. Out of this entire episode, this is one of the best cases of this episode. The pros. This case was expertly told. All the players, I call them players, but all the actors in this video, they did their job awesomely. They were able to tell a story of a guy named Lee Selwyn and how he was a nice person and how basically he was brutally murdered for no reason. When I look back and I talk to people online about Unsolved Mysteries, when I go, what is a case that you will remember from time to time? A lot of them, if it's not ghosts or UFO related, they will instantly go to the Lee Selwyn case, because Lee Selwyn was such a very nice and respectable guy. He really had no enemies. He had no enemies, and it's just kind of sad that in a world where we have a lot of bad people, somebody nice like Lee Selwyn could have been an asset, but sadly, he was taken from everybody. The one thing I can honestly say, I didn't put it as a pro here, I forgot to, was the person who brutally killed Lee Selwyn was apprehended. He was apprehended, and he is currently still serving. I think he's serving a life sentence right now. So yeah, so if anything is to be taken out of this encounter, the person that robbed Lee's family of Lee Selwyn is that his killer was apprehended and punished. Okay, so up next we had the case of Michael Rosenblum. This is a very intricate case, I guess you could say. We have a person who is dealing with his demons. He had an addiction to pain medication, and when his family realized that he was abusing the pain medication, they kicked him out of the family house. I think it was a family house, but him and his girlfriend left in her vehicle. They pulled over at a gas station. He basically told his girlfriend to walk back to the family house, that he'd be there in a couple hours. Michael Rosenblum never returned home. Later on, the girlfriend's vehicle was found with 2 flat tires, and it was hauled off to like a police impound where this vehicle sat. I think they said it was like 2 to 3 months. It was a while that it remained there. During this entire time, the family, filed a missing persons report regarding Michael Rosenblum, and nobody in the police department realized that the car was in police impound. It's believed that that the police department basically kind of covered up the death of Michael Rosenblum. And if you watch the case and you read what I read to everybody, it'll sound like he did meet up with some foul play from possibly the police department. I think it could have been an issue with drugs. However, sorry about that. The participants were believable. No one that was interviewed for this case did I feel that that they could not be trusted. I believed everything that the people who came on camera, basically who talked about this case. I believe what they said, and I'll go on their side. I think that Michael ran amongst foul play. This case, there's times that you can watch a case from Unsolved Mysteries, and you'll get that feeling like either it goes way too quick. It's like information, done. Yeah. Or it'll just drag on so long. You'll be like, oh my God, please let this be done. Please let this be done. And this was actually one of those cases. This actually felt like it lasted the right amount of time. They told you who Michael was. They explained what happened to Michael, and then they had they basically had the closure. It wasn't like it didn't feel like you were just being like bombarded with facts in rapid succession. Yeah. And honestly, like the Lee Selwyn case, I couldn't really find anything wrong with this case. Okay, up next we have the case of Arthur Frankford. This was a fraud case. Basically, Arthur Frankford gallivanted around Florida, and he was known as the senior citizen Don Juan. Basically, he would form relationships with various elderly ladies, and once they trusted him enough, he basically robbed them blind. Thankfully, he was apprehended, and that's what I put down as a pro here. The con: one of the victims that this case revolved around, her name was Mrs. K. I'll be honest, they did not shine Mrs. K in the best of light. If you watch my coverage of this case, and by the way, I'm going to put the link to each one of those videos in the description so you can actually see it if you would like. Mrs. K, she went on record and she was kind of judging the guy by his looks. Now keep in mind, Mrs. K went to a church where a bunch of senior citizens were dancing, and she saw Arthur Frankford, and she basically originally said that he looked too old. Well, it's like, lady, what are you expecting? You were attending a senior dance. To me, it just makes her look kind of shallow and, not really that humble. When here we have an elderly lady, and she's like, oh God, that guy, he's too old for me. Lady, you're old also, I'm not trying to fucking be mean, but it's the fucking truth. It's like putting an alcoholic in an AA meeting and be like, oh my God, I can't hang out with these people. They're all alcoholics. That's kind of how I viewed it when Mrs. K said, he just looked too old. It's like, lady, you're fucking old too. I'm fucking old, but I'm not going to go to a dance for senior citizens and be like, oh my God, these people are too fucking old. And then some of the other things that she talked about was how he was able to do stuff for her, like, making the bed, getting groceries, doing. I watched that case before I did my reading of the Black Site file, and honestly, to me, it sounded like she really just wanted a sugar daddy, basically. She wanted somebody there to basically do all the stuff for her, and she really didn't have to work that much. But yeah, so they really didn't paint her in the best of light, and that's about it. Okay, it is now time for the review or episode review summary. Let me turn down my microphone a little bit. There we go. So, the number of cases, we had 3 cases. However, 2 other cases were omitted. The cases that were covered, we had the killer of Lee Selwyn, the case of Michael Rosenblum, and the case of Arthur Frankford. The case types that we had was, we had a wanted case, which was the killer of Lee Selwyn, missing persons for Michael Rosenblum, and the fraud case of Arthur Frankford. Okay, so for the pros were that we had 2 cases that were solved. The Selwyn and the Frankfurt cases were solved. Lee Selwyn case, I think Lee Selwyn case is one of the best cases out of all of Unsolved Mysteries. There's just something about this case that constantly brings me back and remembers, the person. Lee did not deserve to die. He was, like I said, he was a prime example of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Uh let's see here. Another positive that we had was the believable argument made against the Baldwin Borough Police Department during the Michael Rosenblum case. Everybody that talked in that video, they presented a very strong case about what could have happened to Michael Rosenblum. See here. All 3 cases seem to have been the right length. None of the 3 cases really felt short, or they didn't feel like they were being rushed. They all, they all felt the right length. The actors and actresses of this episode all did a good job, in my opinion. And then finally, it's season 1. Season 1, I feel that the first couple seasons, at least, of Unsolved Mysteries was the best that there could have been. So that's why I put down season 1, perfect audio, video, and production. Okay, so with the pros out of the way, there's always going to be some cons. Okay, so sadly we had 1 case unsolved, which was the Rosenblum case. Now I'm still kind of debating if I'm going to be talking about like the amount of cases that are solved and the cases that are not solved. Should those really make it into the positives and the pros and cons, basically? So I'm still kind of thinking about that. Mrs. K, just the way she acted, I'm not talking about the actress. I'm literally talking about Mrs. K herself. She really did not help her case when at times she sounded like, she sounded like very shallow. It's like, oh my god, he was, kind of old. And then she only talked about like what he could do for her, like, housework and all that. So it's like, ugh. It really doesn't make her look the best, look like, like she was a victim. Granted, she was a victim. However, it just really makes her not seem like that sad of a person when you have somebody, talking about how she thought that the person that she looked at was too old. Basically, it's like, lady, you're fucking old. I'm old, but you don't see me going around like, oh my god, that person over there, they're fucking old. Look at me, I got fucking gray hair right here. So yeah, the Mrs. K, she was in silhouette because she was ashamed of what happened to her. I'll be honest, 99% of the time I've seen people in silhouette and on Unsolved Mysteries, you can still make out a little bit of that person. Even if they have, like, say, a voice modulator, they don't do the silhouette right. So you can still tell, like, the person may have, like, brown hair or gray hair. They may be a white person, an African American. You can still tell a little bit. The silhouette never really functions, you know. It never really functions. What they should have done, if they want to have a person in silhouette, instead of just putting them in silhouette, just run video the case itself and have Mrs. K narrate over the video instead of having her be in a room where she's supposed to be in a fucking silhouette, yet you can still make out portions of the lady. It's like, no, stop it with the silhouette. Silhouette never really fucking works. This is an issue that I had with with season 1, episode 12. Lack of case variety. All these cases here, even though these cases are all good cases, even though all these cases are good cases, what is really, like, what makes these like a mystery? What makes these like a mystery? I would have been more willing to accept these cases if we had like a UFO case or a goddamn ghost case. You know, everything that I watched here felt like it could have been on like an episode of America's Most Wanted, for example. You know, it's like, did they have to go with literally uh unexplained death? Okay, like I said, Lee Selwyn case is a great case. The missing person, okay, and a fraud case. These cases sound like something you could have found on your standard crime documentary, you know. And this goes to what I said, just talked about. Where were the ghosts? Where are the UFO? You know, the unexplained. This is Unsolved Mysteries. And it felt like really this time around, they were trying to go for, like I said, like for your America's Most Wanted vibe. It's like sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And sadly, it just did not work this time around. Okay, so final thoughts. I have to get, you know, even though nothing was technically wrong with this episode, it's just due to the issue that there was there was nothing that really made this an Unsolved Mysteries episode. It was Unsolved Mysteries, but it just didn't feel like it. So I give this case a B minus. I hate to say it, if it did not have the Lee Selwyn and the Michael Rosenblum cases, those two cases propped this episode up. Now keep in mind, I'm only covering the items that, you know, are fresh. We already knew about Roger's Kane. We already knew about Steven, whatever his fucking name is. Steven, let's see here. Oh god, I should. It's Steven something. Okay, I don't have his name. It's Steven something. Let's see here. Episode 1, season 13. Stephen Cox. We already knew about Roger's Kane and Stephen Cox. Those are good cases also, but if you want to go by like new content, stuff that you did not already know about, there wasn't that much here. You know, like I said, Lee Selwyn and Michael Rosenblum, they really propped up this episode. If it was not for those cases, this episode would have received an F. It just would have, because of the fact, if you did not have the Selwyn and Rosenblum cases, you would have had Arthur Frankford and then 2 updates. Update number 1 was the Stephen Cox, which I think was already covered a couple times. And then you had Roger's Kane. Like, there was not enough meat on the bone with fresh content to really prop this episode up. And like I said, because of that, it would have got an F. I think I was being pretty generous giving it a B minus, even though, you know, it had 2 awesome cases. But if you look at it as a whole, there just was not that much there. Case MVP. It was a tie. It was a tie, ladies and gentlemen. The MVP, I cannot pick one above the other, so I'm giving it a tie. I'm giving it both the MVP both to the Selwyn and Michael Rosenblum case. Basically, both cases were expertly told. I couldn't pick one case above the other. And because of that, you know, you already have two, you already got two of the three picks. So no matter what, at the end of the day, the lackluster case was going to be the Arthur Frankfurt. Nothing wrong with the case, but I had to pick something, like. Okay, so with that out of the way, it is time to look forward to season 1, episode 14 of Black Site Files from Unsolved Mysteries. This will actually cover 6 cases, ladies and gentlemen, and I do not think that any of these cases were actually already covered. So this is actually going to be a longer episode of Black Site Files from Unsolved Mysteries. As you know, I kind of break the show into the individual cases. So we have over a month's worth of content here. So I wish I could have these in order, but the program that I use does not put the images in the order I prefer. They just kind of spit it out in it like this. So let me see here. Let me pull up the cases in order. Hold on one second. Okay. Season 1, episode 14. Okay, so for the first case of season 1, episode 14, I will be covering the case of Jeremy Bright. Now, Jeremy Bright, I have them all named up here, so you should be able to see it. Jeremy Bright, he was visiting family in Myrtle Point, Oregon. And at that time, the county fair was in town. He wanted to go to the fair, and the family he was staying with allowed him to go to the fair, and he never came home. And he was actually never located. Rumors persist that Jeremy was actually shot, and he ended up dying from his injuries. After that, we have the case of John Martin. Oh God, I cannot really recall that much about John Martin. Let me see. Let me just see if I can do it. Oh, okay. John Martin. He was a 39-year-old patrolman for Ewing, Virginia. It looks like, according to the Wikipedia. And basically, he stopped the vehicle. He went to question the driver, and apparently he was shot. Just before he died, he was able to relay the events of, what happened to him and the vehicle that, the person was in. Let's see here. After that, we have the case of Leo Curry. Basically, I'm guessing you could say like I'm guessing he was like possibly like a mobster. I can't really recall that much about this case. I'm going to watch this episode tonight before I go to bed so I can get kind of refreshed. But basically, he preferred like strong arm tactics to try to, I'm guessing, kind of force out competitive businesses. I guess that's the best way you could really say it. Up next, we have the case of Michaela Garrett. Garrett. She was kidnapped, if I remember correctly. She was kidnapped in 1988, November 1988. And as of this, as I'm recording this, the case remains unresolved, sadly. I think this was a case where Michaela and a friend was going to like a Minute Mart, and she ended up being grabbed when she went to go get her scooter that was moved away from its previous location, like it was used as like a trap. After that, we have the case of Kay and Jim Tatum, also known as the Tatum House. This is a haunting case, and basically that they were the Tatums were being harassed. I think they were claiming that I think that a scientist determined that it could have been a poltergeist that was haunting Kay and Jim Tatum. The one thing I remember a lot about this case is that there was a bell, and the husband and wife, Kay and Jim, they ended up telling each other like a code sequence when ringing the bell, and the poltergeist learned about this and would ring the bell. That's what I remember. And then finally, we're going to be closing off this episode with the case of Dan Williams. Dan Williams was your old school prospector. He was an old school prospector who went out to check out a possible location that had some gold, if I remember correctly. And he ended up disappearing with nobody ever knowing what ended up happening to him. It's actually a good, what happened kind of case, which I cannot wait to cover. But that is it, ladies and gentlemen. Season 1, Episode 14 will have a total of 6 cases. And these cases are all, once again, they're really good cases. So I cannot wait to start covering these for everybody. But that is it, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed this this review, I guess you could say. If you liked my thoughts about this episode, feel free to drop a line. Let me know what you think. If you dislike what I said, that's okay. Also, let me know what you think. I gave this episode a B-. What would you guys have given this episode? I'd like to hear what you have to say. But that is it, ladies and gentlemen. I will see you next time. My name is Jeff, aka GCurse. I will see you for the next installment of Black Site Files from Unsolved Mysteries.